I'm going to call the meeting to order. Um, I'm going to avoid all the pleasantries and so on. This is a special meeting of the RDAP. Not exactly an emergency, but not far from it. The plan was to listen to the DRJS talk about where the bills that we talked about last month, well, no, this month actually, had gone. And just to get a sense of them, you've looked over them because they've been sent to you, I know. Um, and let's start with that because the point of this is to get a letter together. Thank you, Rebecca. Um, that this is the only chance we have to have any say in this session. We certainly aren't being given that. And we're going to take it, or we're going to hope to take it. So, Laura, why don't you just take it over?
Okay. Um, my colleague Angela Lasso Jimenez is also here, so
Hi, Angela.
she's gonna
Hey,
jump in when we talk about the bills that are not necessarily criminally related, but have equity implications and or things that we're just watching in the office. I'll also say before I share my screen, I'm not sure if I have permission to do that, so I'll need it. And also, I did send out an updated document. It's going to be briefer than our last presentation, but just updates on things.
Oh, okay. You sent that out already?
Yes, I actually sent it out earlier this afternoon, and by earlier I mean like 3 o'clock. So I apologize. It was really
Okay.
late in the afternoon, and I
Okay.
was like, "Please send this to everyone," but I'll just send it as a follow up, or you can send it as a follow up
Sure.
after.
Sure.
Um,
Absolutely. Okay.
okay,
Go Todd, I guess. Yes.
okay. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
Is
yes.
it zoomed in enough? Kind of.
It
Can
seems fine to me, but
Okay. Cool. So this is just another, we took out some of the bills that we talked about last time because they haven't really gone anywhere. If it has a check, that means it made crossover or that there's equity concerns. If there's an X, that means it didn't make crossover, but it's on our radar of things to be thinking about.
right.
So
Okay.
we have these charts. Like I said, just going to run through really fast. So we're still watching S12, H118, which you'll see later is actually on the governor's desk already. S9, same thing. S1 or S87, the extradition procedures. I'm going to lean on you again, Rebecca, when it comes time for that. S109, we added S87 and S109 from the last time based on the conversation we had earlier this month.
Mm-hmm.
We also kept H357, an act relating to the Office of Racial Equity, 361, added 379, which is related to second look sentencing. And I believe as of today, they've basically added it into S109. So again, we'll talk about that when we get there. And then keeping H382 in there as well. Then these are just bills that in our experience we've been following, but they're likely not going to come up until the second half of the session. I know we've mentioned before H32, which is about opioid use disorder in correctional facilities. I low-key felt like this was kind of a sleeper bill. And I know the committee is trying to vote it out of committee so that it can be picked up by the Senate first thing. We have S128 about exemptions for minimum wage and raising the minimum wage for incarcerated individuals. Similarly, with an act relating to commissary and telecommunications, and we've got a new act creating a felony penalty for a violation of condition of release. We also added in H409 about bail revocation, and then H410, which was about recidivism. And there was a conversation in the committee room today in House Judiciary about potentially adding the recidivism piece into S109, but I don't think they're going to try. I don't think they're going to try to do that. I hope they don't try to do that. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So these are the ones that we are going to just talk about in a little bit more detail. So S12, which is the sealing bill, S87, which is the extradition bill, S109, which is the miscellaneous judicial bill, H32, which is the opioid use disorder bill, and then H379, which is the second look sentencing act. This is me talking a lot. Sorry, guys.
No,
So S12, and please interrupt me, anybody who has also been following these things, for any additional concerns you might have. Like I said, gonna need you, Rebecca, for one of these, for sure. So S12 is the act relating to sealing criminal history records. It essentially creates a robust sealing system. It eliminates expungement almost holistically, from being a tool that we can use. We have a lot of concerns about this. We actually just testified in the House, I believe, last week. There is a lot of broad access and use to who can look at these sealed criminal history records. We mentioned digital punishment repercussions. Essentially, the information is still going to be out there, whether or not you expunge it or you seal it, because of the digital age that we live in. We also recommended, and this is something that will be in the future, about potentially creating a statute of providing individuals a record if they are the subject of that record as a matter of course. There is language in here that does allow that to happen, but we were thinking more broadly in the future. And then also expanding the list of eligible convictions, because I think right now it doesn't really there's more that can be done based on my understanding. And it's passed the Senate and it's now in House Judiciary. I think they're taking testimony on it next week, because this week they're focusing really heavily on the extradition bill and the miscellaneous judicial bill. Any questions before on that?
not for me.
Okay. So S87 is an act relating to extradition procedures. From my understanding, it minimizes the waiting times to extradite individuals, and also requires less signatures. But it shortens the process, I think. And so the equity concerns that we have, these are actually some of the things I took from your testimony, was the impact on people over process, and essentially that there's a process in place that we're not already doing correctly, and that please jump in and correct me. And then also potential increases on detainment times for individuals who are, say, waiting to be extradited. It passed the Senate, and like I said, voting will likely happen this week. It's slotted on the schedule for Friday. Is there anything you want to add?
I'll just add that it tests from testimony from the judiciary last week. And Todd was there and I was there too, and we gave some testimony on the latest version. It seemed to be just a constantly work in progress, and it'll be interesting to see whether or not a vote happens. There's testimony being taken on Thursday, and I'm invited back, and I think Todd, you are too, and the judiciary, on this latest version that we haven't even seen yet. So who knows? I'd also just like that it is being presented as minimizing the waiting times, but as is always, there's some fine details in a different section, which is actually expanding the amount of time people will sit in jail by 30 days. And ostensibly because there's a problem with the demanding state getting their paperwork together to get an application in order to present to the governor for a governor's warrant. And I guess 30 days is been argued to be needed for more time. But the second part, which is, so that's 30 more days in detention, so that's not streamlining it. The second part is a proposal to minimize waiting times, I guess, by bypassing a judiciary check on a prior signed waiver in a different state, and not giving the person counsel, and not even having sort of the basic requirements for when there is a request for extradition, whether or not a warrant is placed. So, so there's some concerns were raised as to that proposal from the judiciary last week, transparency concerns, and that's why we're back at the table coming at another stab at this. But yeah, obvious concerns here, where someone can just be arrested without a warrant, detained, and summarily removed from this state. And certainly to the extent that that is a process that bypasses the judiciary without counsel or even the defendant being brought in, there's huge concerns.
Okay.
Thank you for adding that additional.
Can I just mention I pretty fundamentally disagree with the characterization of the bill. I think there are multiple.
As you know, Todd, extradition is a really complicated process, so I just did my best.
No, not your characterization alone. I would just say, from our perspective, the goal here, there are a certain subset of extradition proceedings where an individual in a different state has already said, extradite me if I leave. not to require a full process during which the individual who's been detained in Vermont is subject to either bail requirements, which means that if they violate those bail requirements, they pick up whatever charges they do in Vermont, or in certain instances, they're actually incarcerated during that time period while we wait for the state who has the extradition requirement or request to go all the way up to their governor, physically sign a piece of paper, have that physically signed piece of paper mailed to Vermont, where we look at it in the AGO and then bring it to our governor to sign it. The goal here is to say, folks who've already pre-signed a waiver, we're going to get you back to the demanding state. Rebecca's right. There are some extensions in some of the timelines. They're not actually, by my understanding, extensions beyond the scope of what people currently stay. It's simply narrowing some and expanding others to allow for the process to play out. 75% of those folks aren't incarcerated during that time. The only ones who are folks who are charged with a crime that leads up to life imprisonment. So from our perspective, it's making a process more expeditious. I think we're supportive of adding a judicial check at this point. But we'll see, as Rebecca says, we haven't seen the final language, so we'll see what comes out this week. I do anticipate it getting voted out of House Judiciary this week. And I think it'll probably go out with some kind of quick stop to allow some judicial process in it.
Rebecca?
I'm not doing a counterpoint. I was just going to do an additional point, which I think, Todd, please correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think there's been any testimony presented on this bill to House Judiciary as to the demographics of the people who this would be impacting, meaning the fugitives who would be detained. I don't think there's been any data presented, so we don't know the impact of who's subject to this. And so to me, that's also where, in terms of relevance for this conversation, the panel, in terms of the racial equity concerns, it's just been understudied, right?
Completely agree. Completely agree. I don't think there's been any testimony on the equity impact.
Shocking.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Laura.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Also,
I'm being snarky.
I love your snarky, Tom. So the next bill we have is S109, which is an act relating to miscellaneous judicial procedures. So these are just miscellaneous updates to various judicial processes. There's a lot of things going on in this bill, and it is definitely miscellaneous. I believe they update real estate law in one section. There's some language changes and updates to Act 180 that passed last year. But in the new sections, these are the ones that we have concerns with. So sections 34 through 36. There's a lot of prosecutorial discretion involving certain decisions, and expanding the time frame for someone who's being sentenced to community service. There was a lot of conversation actually today about whether it was the minimum or maximum that an individual could get, and whether or not they would choose community service over an incarcerative term based on how long that was. And again, the other folks that are here that are following that bill probably could explain that a little better than I can. And then also in these new sections, there's a working group that was created. Again, I mentioned the Second Look Sentencing Act, so that has now kind of been absorbed into S109, into a working group. We felt that there were some stakeholders that were left out of that group, which is concerning. And there was also a lot of questions about data and different kinds of data collection and things like that, but no processes or conversations around what the collection actually looks like. It's passed the Senate, it's in the House. They're gonna vote on it on Friday. It's slotted to be voted on.
Wait a minute. Let me get this straight. Without data on any of this, they're going to vote on it?
I don't know about on any of it because it's like a 36-page bill, but I definitely will say, I watched your testimony, Rebecca, that it felt like there was a lack of context on the committee's part of the work that had already been done, especially with the new sections that they added. I'll say that, especially with the second look sentencing aspect of what they want the working group to be. And again, I felt we felt when we were reviewing these things that there were definitely folks that were left out of the stakeholders for this working group. Sorry, my cat did a weird thing. Okay. Go ahead, Rebecca.
I'll share that I testified on that part today, and I had the same issues. There's six stakeholders identified to be a member of the part of the study group on what a second look law should look like. And I pointed out that RDAP had just last year in our report submitted it suggestion supporting second look legislation, and sentencing commission had been involved, and all sorts. And the 6 members identified were all government stakeholders, including the Defender General's office. One, though, the 6th one was a regional nonprofit, New England drop life without parole nonprofit, but no RDAP or designee representation, and no designee or executive director from the ORE, or basically any voices that can bring in community member impacted. And that was a question that concern brought forward, which is whether or not it should be a government stakeholders only group or not. And for what it's worth, even if this group may not have wanted me to have asked for and argue that there should be
No,
a
please.
member from RDAP and ORE or designee owner.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was great testimony.
I can give a very small update on that. Earlier this afternoon, I did get communication from the chair asking if we would be willing / interested in participating on that. So there may be an update to that language.
Who
Thanks,
is
Rebecca.
they?
They.
The ORE, you mean?
Ori.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Todd, do you have anything to add about S109? Okay. And then the last 2 we have is, like I said, H32, which likely nothing is going to really happen until 2026, but the committee is really pushing amendments and updates on this because they want to vote it out. I mean, Chair Emmons has been very clear about moving forward on this. Essentially, this bill provides medication continuity of care for individuals who have opioid use disorder, who are being released into the community. So it provides them with medication that they need. And then it also adds a new data collection / reporting requirement. Some of our concerns include their language inconsistency. There is a difference between the term offender and the term inmate. So it conflates who this bill actually impacts depending on based on how those words are defined, because we're talking about different populations technically. And then there's also huge data implications. So one of the last conversations was about waiting to do this until the new Global Commitment 1115 waiver, which is related to our Medicaid services, goes into effect. And that won't go into effect until January of 2026. And then they want to have the department kind of predict how many individuals this will impact and work tangentially with the Department for Vermont Health Access. But because nothing has been implemented, there's not really any kind of clear path forward. And the committee is asking for a lot of things that can't really happen until the waiver is in place. And also they want to include a reporting requirement because they want to see how successful the program is if it moves forward. So there's a lot of really weird things happening. And I think that if this is done poorly, it will have way more detrimental negative impacts than it would do any good. There's also the continuity of care is specifically only for the medication and the pharmaceutical aspect. There's nothing in this bill about mental health care or other things that these individuals might need to actually help them. I'll just say that. They were supposed to vote on this bill today. I watched some testimony. They did not. So it's likely that they're going to have another version. They're already on version 4. I really think that this is going to come up and something that we need to pay attention for, or we think for 2026. So that's why it was included.
Okay.
So, and then the last one, like I said, like I've mentioned previously, this has likely been absorbed now into S109, but H379, which is an act relating to second look sentencing, it basically attempts to provide a process for folks to address their sentences if they meet certain requirements after serving 15 years of their sentence. And then, as it says here, it's likely becoming a study committee and moving forward. The bill was clearly also not written with Vermont in mind. It was a lot of general kind of garbage language and not in the ways that we would do things in the state. So it's not really tailored to Vermont. There was also no standards for eligibility. So like you could be a person who served 15 years of your sentence and did every single program available to you, or you could be a person who served 15 years of your sentence. So there was no kind of parameters around like who could actually apply to these programs. This isn't on there, but there is, I believe, prosecutorial discretion there as well, like an appeal process. And then, as I mentioned, it's inconsistent with processes that we already kind of currently have. It's currently in-house corrections and institutions right now, but I imagine that this will not likely go anywhere. But it's again in theory, because we've talked about second look sentencing and reported on it in this committee, felt like it was important to bring up.
Right.
I think that's it for criminal related bills. Before Angela takes over, does anybody have any questions? Okay. And Angela, just let me know when you need me to scroll.
Okay, so those are the non-criminal related bills that we believe we should pay attention to. S27, that's about medical debt relief. H169, that's about preventing house discrimination. H91, which is about the Vermont Homeless Emergency Assistance Response something program. I forgot the name, but it's a VHAR program. That's way easier to say it. The other one is S56 or H375. It's an agriculture bill. And finally, H167, which is about the education transformation proposal. So, yep. The first one, the medical debt relief, I think it's a very good one. The House proposed amendments to the bill, so it's in the Senate right now, and they gave clearer definitions, and yeah, they defined better some keywords who were not defined in the original version. So I think this is very likely to pass. The other one, H169, they were trying to amend discrimination in public accommodations in housing by telling landlords that they should accept not only social security number but also other government IDs. And now they had to negotiate with the landlords so they will accept social security numbers but also other identification other IDs, such as individual taxpayer identification numbers or government issued identification. So yeah, they are, I don't remember the number of the draft, but they are constantly changing it. So I don't know what is going to happen at the end. The VHAR program passed the House and it's in the Senate Health and Welfare right now. And I think you can scroll now. The Office of New Americans, so this bill passed the Senate, but it's in House GovOps, and they will create a study committee to make recommendations for creating the office. So this study committee is composed or will be integrated by us, Office of Racial Equity, but also Migrant Justice, the Association of Africans Living in Vermont, the Vermont Afghan Alliance, and other people. So I really like the people who are going to sit there. And obviously I'm biased, but I really like the people who will be in that committee. Then the Bill H167, which establishes the Vermonters Feeding Vermonters Grant, passed the House and it's in the Senate Agriculture, and same with the Vermont. Okay, now you can see what VHAR stands for. Vermont Homeless Emergency Assistance and Responsive Transition to Housing Program, or VHAR.
Right.
So those are the non-criminal related bills. And finally, some are in the governor's desk. The first one is the hate motivated crimes. So we testified on that in House Judiciary and Senate. Um, so yeah, I think the governor will sign it. And I already, okay, thanks, Todd. He already signed it. And the other one is S9, an act relating to after hours access to orders against sexual assault. Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
Yep.
So what I think we need to have a discussion. Oh, I'm sorry. You still have more to go.
No, I was just scrolling back up. I can actually stop sharing. I wasn't sure if you wanted me to keep sharing or not.
I didn't have a feeling about it one way or the other. I wanted to just discuss how we do this. Do we, I mean, we need, if we're going to write a letter, um, we need comments from everybody. I have moved a couple things so that I could actually write this letter. Do people, is that something that people feel comfortable with in general? Talk, answer
With,
question.
with you
Okay.
writing a letter?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Then one of the things I guess I would ask is, do we want to do this? This would be, it's ridiculous to look at everybody right now and go, what do you think? I mean, that's just absurd, right? I mean, I'd love to do that, but we're not androids. So I guess what I would propose, and this is not something I'm wedded to, I am simply throwing out some ideas here, and that one of them would be everybody could get their comment to me really, their comments, let me put it that way, really fast. And I will then synthesize them, put them in together in a letter. That's what's occurring to me right now. I'm sure other things are occurring to other people. Please hold forth. Because we have to figure out something here. Sheila, go for it.
Hey everybody, Sheila.
Hi,
She her.
Sheila.
Hi. Sheila, she her. Sorry about the noise. I'm outside. I'm trying to milk it a little bit. So, so I just want to clarify what you mean, Aton, in terms of
Sure.
your comments. Do you mean comments on all the bills that are presented to us? Give any reflections or comments that we have on any of those things?
Well, and that's the other question, actually, Sheila. Thank you. Is are we going to comment on everything that's now been brought up? Or are we just going to comment on the ones that are in that second column that Laura presented that are, I'm trying to remember what it said on that. That those are bills that are basically active, for lack of a better word. Do we want to limit it to that?
I don't have an answer for that, but I want to say that I would love to see something collective
Yep.
and that to sign on to. And I'm going to turn to you, Rebecca, just because often you'll speak and you have that, insight and that understanding within the bills and everything and the way you articulate understand it, and I usually agree with it. And I just don't have that type of language, those type of words. And not that that's necessary, but yet it is. And so I would love to like come to consensus on if there's opinions that are held generally from panel members that we can sign on to and create that as a collective solidarity letter with, fine to have quotes of our own in there too. I am all about people having their own autonomy as well if that's needed. But as a panel of members together as a committee, I think we should have something together. Um yeah, and if there's quotes or comments that differ from that, then people can say what they like to say. But I don't know. Yeah, I would love the answer to the first question I asked, because that helps me understand a little bit too of what we're doing.
Okay. Susanna.
Hi, thank you. I'm sorry if I'm accidentally repeating something someone else has already said. I think I just want to have the group be all on the same page about what we see as our intent with this communication. I think it needs to happen, but my question is, are we submitting this with the intent of impacting the trajectory of any of these bills, or are we submitting it to be on the record and to make the point that we should be on the record? Because I think that might impact, one, how quickly we move, two, whether and how we follow up, and three, what and how we write it. So if we are writing this with the intent of impacting the trajectory of any of these bills, then A, time is certainly going to be of the essence because we're so close to the end of session. And B, we are going to want to have we need to be really annoying in the follow-up. And it also means that we as individual organizations, because we are a collection of organizations, would really need to come to an understanding about what unified message can we actually agree on that we do want to see affect the trajectory of the work, recognizing that our various individual organizations don't actually always agree on that stuff. So that's going to be a sticky point. But if instead we're saying we want to be on record as this panel, we don't necessarily assume that we will change the trajectory of this work. And I'm not willing to concede that, because I think it would be a damn shame for them to have impaneled us and then us resign ourselves to not being effective. So I don't want to accept that. But in case we choose to say, hey, we may not have an impact here, but we want to register our comments on these bills, then I think there's also value in that. And I'd be willing to do it. But then I think that it might mean that our timeline might be slightly eased a little bit, and also that we may not have to be as prescriptive in terms of what we say. We may just say, these are things you need to be considering as you deliberate it. So I guess that's my question. And we don't even have to answer it here, but I think that if we do, it'll help us understand what are our next steps.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking we did have to answer it here. Go ahead, Rebecca.
I am joining in agreement with what I'm hearing from Sheila and Susanna in terms of the letter. Any letter that we come out with should be a collective, as much as we can, uniform voice, right, on what we're wanting, instead of compiling our individual panel member positions. Not to say there isn't room, but to me, that's when the panel has been strongest in the past,
Yes.
most impactful. And we are impactful at the legislature because we are mixed with government, panel members and community members, where in other groups, when it's just the government, typical government reps, there just is sort of a deadlock where people dig in and we can't get any statement of consensus. And I think that is to RDAP's immense credibility. And so I would love for us to try at least to see if we can get there. Second, to Susanna's question or point, to the extent anyone else wants to weigh in, I certainly am not one to like to sit and wait. We have the long-term issues and long-standing concerns that the legislature is just not prioritizing incorporation of racial equity concerns in the bill making process, period. Whether or not it's RDAP that's being invited to the table or others, just not, right? And we have been effectively pursuing those concerns through, our work on the various bills, right? The racial toolkit, is that what we're calling it? I'm sorry, it's or now with Representative Arsenault trying to help us with that in other ways, right? But I would hope that we be impactful now, then, always, right? And so to me, I think I'm not being too optimistic, right, that we can come to some resolution tonight on some base level. Even if, and Todd, I'm going to reach out to this moment of S87 moment where I do believe that we can find some shared agreement on things, even if what it is a recognition that there hasn't been any testimony taken on an issue that as a panel, we are concerned about. And we don't necessarily have to agree whether or not these individual bills that have been presented, right? Like, so maybe but maybe there are bills that we all can rally and recognize, and those we certainly should identify. Alternatively, we could approach it by still identifying these bills as an examples of where we're not aware that at the committee level, there has been any testimony taken directly addressing the concerns of how this has impacted, have an impact on, right? Racial disparities and whether or not it will aggravate or make it better, right? And so to me, that's where we can find some common ground, and we can be helpful to say, look, we've been presented with this bill, this bill, this bill, this bill, this category criminal, crossover to the non-criminal. What seems to be a pattern that we are seeing, and do not disagree, there's no indication that there's been any. I don't know. I'll stop there.
I like that because it actually then reinforces a tremendous amount that we've already tried saying to them. You know, and just pulling out the bills and going, these obviously have equity concerns attached. And once again, there has been no testimony on these from a body that is in fact made up of community members and government actors that has, because of that constitution, been very powerful in pointing out equity concerns. And we can certainly write that. And that's not even very long. How detailed do you want to get? I don't mean to put you on the spot, Rebecca, but
yeah, and I also I want to hear other people's.
Okay.
But I'll just add this for what it's worth. I don't think we should just say we've noticed that there hasn't been any testimony taken on X subject, right? We should also say, well, we think it actually is critical, right? To me, it's what our intros effectively have been, because we're not operating in a vacuum and without any past history from this panel of what we've been presenting consistently, which is not afraid to back away from addressing, acknowledging the problem is real here in Vermont, not somewhere else, right? And whether it is actually going to be exacerbated by that particular bill, we don't know. We do know we have a problem, and we have had enough concerns, and we want to see. I don't know, however you want to say it, but that's my next step suggestion.
Okay.
In the letter.
Laura, and then Kea has a comment she'd like to make.
I was just thinking while you were talking and while I was listening about the testimony that you gave in November at the Joint Justice Oversight meeting.
You mean me?
Yes, you, Eitan.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yes.
Yes. And I'm wondering if there's anything that we could pull from that too, just to be like, hi, remember you said you didn't know about us, and I'm here testifying, asking you to like do the thing.
I am feeling this in my, I don't know what, somewhere way down low, but good. Like, I would love to write something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so pissed off right now.
Yeah, no, 1,000%. Well, and I was just thinking about how you said all of the things that we're talking about, but in a very eloquent and diplomatic and Eitan way, right? That wasn't so much of a like big FU but it was, right? And so I'm just wondering if I can't remember if you only gave verbal testimony, if you gave written testimony, but I guess my suggestion is thinking back to that testimony that you gave, pulling from that too, and just re-highlighting some of those points. You're like, I'm just thinking of you being like, I literally was here in November and you didn't read the report, and I told you all these things, we've existed for 8 years, or like, you know what I mean? Anyway, that's just me being like,
Okay. That's Kea? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, my computer. I've just rehooked my computer up, so I'm trying to find where things are. And it's slightly off topic, but one of the reasons I come to this meeting whenever I can is a deep belief in the fact that y'all understand the trauma associated with some of this stuff. And the fact that it's not referred to or talked about when they created my position and they have an expert that could actually come in and tell them stuff.
Oh, you too?
Mhm. So if you want to mention that in your letter, I would be eternally grateful.
I would be delighted and honored.
Because I'm just, I'm thinking about racial trauma. I'm thinking about generational trauma, especially
Right.
with the New American Office. I'm actually really frustrated because I didn't know about that bill because it wasn't one we were tracking.
Right.
And it's just like there's so much trauma associated with that,
Oh
especially
God, yeah.
now,
Yeah.
that it's frustrating. But I think it's connected to the work y'all do.
I think I would agree. Susanna.
What's the relationship between the victim services units that exist and the trauma work? Because I think that there's a natural overlap there, and maybe the state's attorney's department would be interested in participating in that conversation.
I don't have any connection with them because they don't talk to me. I talk to anybody, you know that, Susanna, but unless they're willing to talk to me or create that relationship, I've reached out through different ways but haven't been effective. So if you want to connect me with them, that would be awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, I only named the one, but I think there's probably a few. I don't know how many different entities there are that do.
Anthony's put them in the chat.
Okay.
Well, I was just saying, are we talking about state advocates or are we talking about nonprofits? Because those are two separate types of advocates.
Well, I mean, I would say for now we focus on the state government ones because I think that's our main area of focus as a group. But to the extent that it's helpful to understand the overlap, areas of synergy, areas of gaps between state and non-state ones, I think that would also be helpful too. But in terms of whether we can make prescriptive recommendations or input like that, I think it makes sense to focus on the state systems that we're all already involved in. Or that could mean, making recommendations to appropriate funds to non-state entities. But we know right now that, the budget conversation is, for a lot of people, a lost cause.
Let me ask, if we go, and I'm just playing with ideas here, right? I'm not necessarily married to anything. If we go with what Laura's recommending, what's our time frame?
I think I take your question, Eitan, to be how much longer is the session going to be going on? Is
That would
what-
be part of it. Yeah.
Because I guess I also understood the letter was to the legislature and
Yes.
to somebody else, but I should have clarified. I don't know if others have other thoughts on who the letter should go to. But I would vote for at least including the legislative bodies and the people we've usually sent our reports to.
Sure. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so if that's the question of how much longer is session going to be going,
Well,
but
just if people are behind this or we're thinking about it and they need more information, it would just be nice to have a sense of what the time frame is. Does it need to be written tomorrow? Does it need, or maybe by Monday, or you know what I'm saying? I need to know.
Yeah, not to get too far in the weeds, I think Susanna's probably in the right ballpark for when the session is sort of slated to end, at least until there's a veto session in June. But I think for the purposes of this letter, sooner is better.
Okay.
And I say that because structurally, for example, Senate Judiciary is going to wind down in the next 2.5 weeks. I think most of the morning committees in the Senate will end on the 16th. At least that's the plan. And so, for any letter to have an impact, I think it's got to be sooner because it's got to impact House Judiciary if something's going to the Senate. And most of the bills we've discussed that are in House Judiciary will have to go back to the Senate. main committees we'd be looking at. I know, like, Angela's, the bills she walked us through have different committees of jurisdiction, but health and welfare in the Senate's also a morning committee. So there are a number that I think have to move. And I just broadly support the concept that Rebecca and Laura have laid out of, you know, let's raise the issue that the issues haven't been raised.
Okay. I think I know everything I need to know for that one. I shouldn't be laughing. That's really bitter. It's bitter laughter. But
Can we just confirm how we're going to communicate in ways that do not constitute quorum?
that was my next. Thank you.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's important. I mean, how are we going to get this around to everybody to look at? You were going further, Susanna?
No, I mean, the typical method that I have seen is everybody said you may broadcast to the full group, but everybody sends you replies individually, and it's not a collaborative working document. So somebody may either do track changes and send you their version, or may just tell you what changes they want and you incorporate it. I know that that's messy and annoying to have to tentacle all of that, but
I don't see what else there is to do.
And we can always do, I can double check this, but at the end of whenever you set the deadline, you can also send the final draft out and we can have an online approval. I will double check that we can do that as opposed to.
I'll write it tomorrow and then send it to all of you tomorrow. That's easy. I mean, you know, sort of. And I will write it, and you all, you know what to do. Mark it the hell up. I mean, you put in there, this is our chance this session. I'm not happy about that, but it's what it is. It is our chance this session. Therefore, mark it up, be merciless. Just be nice, but be merciless. Is that working for everyone? Okay. Do a this if it's working for you. Okay. Great. Derek, I'd like to hear your objection.
Because you're anticipating that I have an objection?
Well, you didn't put your thumb up, so I thought you had.
Oh, I am so sorry. I got a somewhat distressed text from my daughter in Oregon at that moment and was distracted. So that was me not multitasking very effectively.
Okay.
No objection. You know, Susanna, your comments about just the organizational composition resonate. I mean, I really personally struggle with not knowing what the heck my institution that I'm the liaison to the RDAP supports, and being in the executive branch kind of complicates that, but I am unequivocal in my support of this and am seeing that I am entrusted to be the representative for DOC, and I don't feel overly burdened to double back on everything, especially things that are just plainly right. So no, quite the contrary. Sorry for that.
That's okay.
Yep.
Let me one more check. Farzana, we didn't have a finger from you. God, that sounded really bad. A thumbs up or a thumbs down for this plan. And I just wanted to see where you're at with this.
Yeah.
Okay, that works. I'll get writing about 5 o'clock tomorrow morning. I will have it to you. Let's just say close the business at the outside. I'm going to try for a lot before that, but let's just, that's a hard deadline. I'm going to try to be quicker than that. I don't think this is going to take as long as what I was originally proposing. So, cool and groovy. Are we all right with this? Good.
Yes. Sorry, I didn't have my thumbs up. I'm
That's
using my
okay.
phone.
I just,
so-
I just,
I was trying to find my mute button and to unmute, but I'm using my phone. So
got it. Okay. Grant, you're cool? Okay. That's all we have then for tonight.
Say something really quick,
Oh,
just
hold
for your
on. Yeah.
help.
Go
You
ahead,
may
please.
want to get.
Everybody
You may
put
want
in
to
what
set.
they need to put in.
Okay. No, you may want to set up a deadline for a response, so everyone knows when they need to get comments back.
That's a very good point, Ken. I don't know why that didn't occur to me. What do people think? By Thursday, close the business? Yeah? Okay. By Thursday, close the business. I need comments back on the letter. And then I'll go back at it. I'll go back at it and send it out again.
Do we think that it's worth sending somebody to actually speak to the content of the letter, or do we trust that the committee's going to read it and take it into account and have a shared understanding of what we mean?
I think we should request that in the letter.
I think we should request it now as a placeholder testimony for next week, with the understanding that by then they will have received something from us and we would like to expand on it.
Susanna, can I ask you a favor?
Mm-hmm.
Can you text or email me exactly what you just said?
Sure.
Because I'm like brain dead at the moment.
You got it.
Thank you. Rebecca.
The other question before we all disperse and enjoy the 80-something degree day, if it's still out there. In our summary, quick wrap up of updates, S109, Judiciary and Miscellaneous, there's that bill to the study group. And I shared by part of my additional summary of it that I thought the committee should add RDAP as a group member based on our experience and support for this and obvious insight and additional. Right? So I guess the question here for this group before we disperse is A, the time is now they're considering it. If we were to wait to take this up as new business at our next meeting, it very well could have passed, not necessarily done. So not necessarily too late.
So
we
we
wanna
should
take
do it.
action on it now? Oh, and can we? I don't even know what.
We can ask. We can ask. I mean, it seems like that's the most we can do is ask.
The panel should ask to be included.
On the working group.
And that was my question, if everyone agrees with that,
Oh, does everyone agree with that?
And I said that is my personal opinion, but.
Yeah, we're going for it.
And so then the next question on that follow-up is sort of akin to what Susanna just asked. Do you want to, you're going to reach out to the committee, Chair Lalonde, to request that or not? I mean, I certainly have made that correct.
I mean, I will try. I mean, I'll try writing him a letter. I mean, he's not responded to anything I've done this session. So I don't know what to make of that. Whether whether this is some strange personal thing that I've annoyed him, I don't know. I just know he hasn't. I haven't talked to him since November. But I'll give it a shot. Rebecca, send that to me too in an email. Okay, because my brain is like whizzing right now, and so it's like it'll be useful to have Susanna's email, your email, and then I'll like have everything I need to remember. Unless somebody else has something else. And don't hold back.
I already sent out what we walked through, so you don't have to worry about following up with anybody.
Great. All right. I am on it, and I will send you all stuff tomorrow. All right. Thank you so much for being able to be present tonight. Thank you. And Rebecca, thank you for hammering on me for that. No, I'm serious because I was like working something else, which was pointless, trying to get other legislators. I got to stop. So I'm really glad you put me back on track because I was probably doing something that wouldn't have done anything. So we're going to hope on this one. So please, remember, I'm going to get it to you by close of business at the outside tomorrow. Please give me stuff back by Thursday, close of business. I'll take another stab at it and send it out again. Okay? It's not going to be, really, really gorgeous, but I'll do my best. They got
Thank you
really
so much.
gorgeous. They don't deserve gorgeous at this point. I know I'm not really being very fair or nice, but there it is.
It's okay.
So we should adjourn.